To many, William's plan to conquer England, one of the wealthiest and strongest kingdoms in all of Christendom, must have seemed no more than a bizarre fantasy. There were many contemporaries who doubted him, even in his own court, who told him it could not be done and urged him to call off the invasion. But history is rarely decided by the doubters and the cynics. On one side of the English Channel lay the Duchy of Normandy, founded in 911 as a result of the Treaty of Saint-Clair-sur-Epte, which established Rollo, a Viking warlord, as the first Duke of Normandy, in exchange for his loyalty to the King of France and the cessation of hostilities. William, the descendant of Rollo, came to the position of Duke in 1035, as the result of his father Robert I's death. William was only 7 years old when this happened, and as an illegitimate child, born to a common mistress out of wedlock, his position of Duke was for years in a constant state of peril. William's early years were spent putting down rebellions from pretenders to the throne and resisting attacks from his own overlord, the King of France, with whom he had a turbulent relationship with. By 1060, William had finally secured his dukedom from the internal and external threats posed. For decades of perpetual warfare, diplomacy, plot, political intrigue, and death shaped William. He was now a man, authoritative and hardened, blessed with tremendous vision and ambition, able to see opportunities where others only saw danger. He ruled with an iron fist and leant towards brutality. With Normandy finally secure, William looked outwards to expand his influence. The elderly and childless King Edward the Confessor of England was growing old. In 1051, it was believed that Edward I promised him the crown of England, and in 1064 this promise was reiterated by Edward. However, when Edward passed away in January 1066, the following day Harold Godwinson was instead crowned at Westminster Abbey. This enraged William, who demanded an explanation from Harold. Harold sent an envoy to Normandy, who admitted that while Edward had previously promised the throne to William, this was overridden by his deathbed promise to Harold. William did not dispute the deathbed promise that was allegedly made by Edward, but argued that Edward's prior promise to him took precedence. With no sign of a diplomatic solution in sight, and the Norwegians planning their own invasion of England, William sought the diplomatic and military support of his contemporaries before setting sail and landing in southeast England. It was at Hastings where Harold Godwinson and William the Conqueror faced each other in battle. While Harold's men possessed the high ground, they were overconfident, in part due to their recent victory over the Norwegian invaders to the north. William was able to exploit this by feinting retreat and luring the Anglo-Saxons to a vulnerable position at the bottom of the hill, where they were promptly cut down. Harold Godwinson himself was slain in battle, and William was able to take the throne on Christmas Day 1066. From now on, William was king, and would forever be remembered as William the Conqueror. His coronation at Westminster Abbey was met with firm resistance by many of the Anglo-Saxons. William responded by building castles all across the land. He removed nobles of the old regime who he believed were disloyal, replacing them with Norman aristocrats, and he waged military campaigns to defeat rebels that opposed him. Edgar Etheling, grandson of Harold Godwinson, led many of the revolts against Norman occupation in the hopes of reclaiming the throne from William. However, it soon became apparent that the Normans were holding firmer than expected. In 1069, Edgar was able to convince King Sven of Denmark to intervene on his behalf. Sven agreed and sent a large fleet to raid the coast of northern England. However, due to logistical issues and the inability to live off the land, the Danes were forced to retreat and were chased out of England back to Denmark. With Edgar and his followers going into hiding following the failed Danish invasion, William decided that decisive action was needed against the rebels. Thus began the Harrying of the North, a brutal series of military campaigns over the winter of 1069 and 1070, where Normans indiscriminately slaughtered civilians and rebels alike, scorched the earth with the intention of starving the populace, and looted civilian settlements. At least 100,000 people were killed by the Normans, which was over 5% of the English population. Needless to say, this shocked the whole of Europe, and even contemporaries of William, who were usually supportive of him, condemned the harrying. Although Anglo-Saxon resistance technically continued for another 5 years, never again after the harrying was Edgar able to rally enough support to regain his old momentum. The rest of William's reign was spent primarily tending to domestic issues, such as commissioning the Book of Winchester, a massive survey of all the properties and goods in England and their respective owners for the purpose of taxation. It was a huge and unprecedented reform, and very unpopular, which earned it the nickname the Doomsday Book. However, it was a huge step not only for the English economy, but also a remarkable artifact for any historian. Don't let William's preoccupation with tax reform trick you into thinking his reign was any less troubled than before. His eldest son, Robert, grew unhappy with William's treatment of him and went rogue in the year 1077. Robert and his band of supporters staged an insurrection against William, pillaging much of Normandy and rural France. In response, King Philip of France and King William the Conqueror joined forces to put down Robert's rebellion, marching into the county of Vexin and facing him head-on in battle. However, the Franco-Norman army was unexpectedly defeated by Robert's forces. William himself was almost killed by his own son's hand after being struck off his horse by Robert's lance. Robert recognized his father's voice as he cried out in agony, and decided to spare him. Despite this victory, Robert knew that with the French now cooperating with his father, he could not hold out forever, and a truce was called shortly after. Eventually, Robert was exiled from Normandy and took up refuge in France with the permission of the French King Philip. And combat between Robert and his father largely stopped after this, although with the backing of the French he continued to be a nuisance on occasion. In the year 1087, September, just 21 years short of the anniversary of the Battle of Hastings, William the Conqueror died of injuries sustained in battle while leading an expedition to deal with unrest in southern Normandy. William the Conqueror is one of England's most controversial monarchs. He modernised England, brought sweeping new reforms, and helped bring political stability to Normandy and England. However, he heavily oppressed the native Anglo-Saxons and committed many atrocities in the north of England. Whether or not you believe he was a good or bad king is up for debate, but what is indisputable is that William the Conqueror is one of history's most famous figures for a reason. The decisions he took during his life have shaped not only England and Normandy, but had a dramatic impact on European medieval history, and maybe even world history. What do you think of William the Conqueror? Was he a hero, a villain, or is your position a little bit more nuanced than that? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below.